Please take your seats. Welcome to the 7 o'clock November 13th City Council session. Do we have anything reported out of closed session?
No.
Okay. And roll call, please.
The record will show that all members are present.
Okay, tonight we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance followed by an invocation given by Chris Lagerlof. I hope I pronounced that right, Chris. Yes. I did? Okay, great. With the Mariners Church, and if Councilman Webb would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd appreciate it.
This is a day after Veterans Day, and I'd like to, for us to think about all of the veterans that have gone before us as we say the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, City Council members and Mayor. It's a privilege to be with you, not only to bathe this gathering in prayer, but as myself, being an individual who grew up in the city and graduated from CARNATION High School, so go Sea Kings. Will you join me as we pray? God, we ask for your help to give our individual and collective gifts to those we serve, to give of ourselves in a way that makes a difference, to our families, to each other, and to the community that we live in and love and are committed to caring for. Help inspire and challenge us to greatness as we continue to help meet the evolving needs of people. Energize and equip us to make a difference and fuel our enthusiasm and determination tonight here. For all of this and the opportunity and blessings you give us, we thank you. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. Tonight we have no presentations, which is unusual unless some have popped up in the last few minutes. Nope. Okay. Madam Clerk, notice to the public.
The city provides a yellow sign-in card to assist in the preparation of the minutes. The completion of the card is not required in order to address the council. Speakers must limit comments to 5 minutes on agenda items. The council has the discretion to extend or shorten the time limit on agenda or non-agenda items. As a courtesy, please turn cell phones and pagers off or set them in the silent mode. This is a time for city council announcements or matters which council members would like placed on a future agenda for discussion, action, or report.
We'll start with Councilman Henn tonight.
I have none.
Councilman Curry.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to report about the fact that we've had a great kickoff for the fundraising for the 1-1 Marines Memorial, which will be dedicated on Memorial Day 2008 in Castaways Park. The artist Benjamin Victor was with us over the weekend. He participated in the Marines' birthday celebration and the 1-1 golf tournament held at the Newport Beach Country Club. He was also here for a reception that many of you, I think, had the opportunity to attend. We have the maquette of the sculpture here displayed in the council chamber. And if you go to the city's website, it's an opportunity for every family in our city to participate in making this a memorial a reality. Your tax-deductible donations can be made via the website or by calling the city. Contributions over $1,000 are recognized by having your name or your family or your children's name engraved in bronze and a plaque adjacent to the memorial. Contributions over $200 will receive one of these special commemorative coins, which are really going to be a keepsake and something that everybody in the city is going to be very proud to have. So I encourage all of you to check the city's website and join in supporting the construction of this memorial so that it is in place on Memorial Day 2008 when the Marines of 1-1 are back from Iraq and will have the opportunity to celebrate with us. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Mayor Pro Tem Selich.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Saturday, November the 17th, at St. Mark's Church, that's the new church at San Joaquin Hills Road and MacArthur Boulevard, they're having an open house from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., and they're inviting everyone to attend. And one of the things that they're going to be doing is that members of their environmental group called the Ecophilians will be, Ecophilians, will be on hand to demonstrate the Xeriscape landscaping theme that they have there, as well as St. Mark's other commitments to the environment. If any of you have been out there, it's really a model project on how to do California native plantings. It's absolutely a beautiful facility, and anyone that's interested in that subject, I'd encourage you to attend and see what's going on over there.
Thank you. Councilman Gardner.
Yes, at the Corona Del Mar Library, we've added an additional children's hour. So there's now Books and Babies Tuesdays at 10:30 and preschool story time Wednesdays at 10:30.
Councilwoman Daigle?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I remember in history class, you used to talk about the wonders of the world, the Great Wall and Stonehenge and Colosseum, Grand Canyon. And certainly in our own community, we also have wonders. We have the Bay, the Back Bay, we have Hoag Hospital, Central Library. And with our Back Bay, the city over the years has been trying to take care of this resource. And as a result, we've gotten consistent funding from the federal government thanks to the support of Congressman Ed Royce, then Congressman Chris Cox, current Congressman John Campbell, and Senator Dianne Feinstein. And now the earmarks, which has been the source of this funding, are getting a higher profile. And as a result, Senator Feinstein issued a letter on earmarks and what she'll be looking at. And first of all, it needs to be a project of regional significance, and we fit that criteria. And then secondly is that she wants to understand which projects have the greatest support. And in response to that, I like what Jack Keating of the Naturalist writes to me. It appears to me that we have total consensus on the need to continue this ecological restoration project among the county and all the cities in our watershed. A letter endorsing this project signed by the Board of Supervisors plus mayors of all the cities plus Department of Fish and Game and the resources agencies should do the trick. So the county is coordinating that effort and would appreciate a report maybe December in terms of how that effort's going. And then also I would encourage you as individual citizens to write Senator Feinstein on this regional ecological project. And then additionally, we do have a lobbyist that represents the city at the state level that we're paying monthly for work up there. And I would like an update on what efforts the lobbying firm is making to try and obtain funding for this project at the state level, whether it's through bonds or other mechanisms. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Webb? I have none. And I have none. So we'll move on to the consent calendar. Madam Clerk?
All matters listed under consent calendar, items 1 through 15, and supplemental items 20, 21, and 22 are considered by the council to be routine and will all be enacted by one motion in the form listed below. The city council members have received detailed staff reports on each of the items recommending an action. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time the council votes on the motion unless members of the council, staff, or the public request specific items to be discussed and or removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Members of the public who wish to discuss a consent calendar item should come forward to the lectern upon invitation by the mayor, state their name and item number. If the optional sign-in card has been completed, it should be placed in the box provided at the podium.
Okay, we'll start with Councilwoman Gardner.
Number 13.
Councilwoman Daigle.
None.
Councilman Webb. None. Councilman Henn.
None.
Councilman Curry.
No items to pull. Just to note that item number 7 positions us to move quickly on the Newport Coast, Pelican Hills Road North improvements, which are of critical safety importance to the people of the Newport Coast. We're pending an action by the Homeowners Association's board on an easement, which will enable us to move forward in that improvement very quickly. This positions us to continue to be forward-thinking on that project. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Salich.
I have none.
And I have none. Does the staff have any items they want to
Yes,
pull?
Mr. Mayor. Supplemental item number 20, and that's the professional services agreement for the LCP. Under recommendation number 2, that figure was listed in the staff report as $138,000. The true figure should be $63,000 because there was $75,000 already included in the budget. So that would be the budget amendment amount, $63,000.
Even better. All right, does any member of the public have an item on the consent calendar that they would like to pull? Okay, seeing no one.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move approval of the consent calendar items 1 through 15, items S20 to 22, with the exception of number 13, and number 20 is amended.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, we'll do item number 13. Councilwoman Gardner, you had.
Well, I noticed, I mean, this is really only to review and file, but I did notice that staff has hesitations about the recommendation as far as funding, and I think Councilman Webb and I had some hesitations earlier about the cities that we were going to be comparing ourselves to. So I wonder if staff has any comments about this report and its feelings overall.
I think we feel like the report is very good, with that possible exception of the conclusions drawn in terms of what the appropriate level of funding for the Conference and Visitor Bureau is. And speaking for Glenn Everode, oh, he is here. Okay, Glenn, why don't you come up, because I want you to give your point of view. Is that Glenn and I had several conversations with Mr. MURDAUGH, and we decided to take exception to that recommendation because we thought the cities and the situations in which he was comparing us to, a number of them had conference centers. A number of them had funding, substantial amount of funding that was coming from the private sector. And we just chose to disagree, and he did not want to change his report. But in terms of the adequacy of funding the Conference and Visitor Bureau here in Newport Beach. Glenn, if you feel free to dovetail in on that.
Mayor and council members, I agree with what City Manager Bluedow has related. I might add this as it relates to the funding. The MURDAUGH reports and his analysis, his determination that the CBB was inadequately funded relied entirely on a survey conducted in 2005 by the Destination Marketing Association International. Newport Beach didn't participate in that survey, and the survey made no attempt at creating a competitive set to any particular cities. They created 5 funding categories. Newport Beach found itself in the middle of the 5 funding categories. Excuse me. And as Homer related, there was no distinction amongst the respondents in that survey between those that were operating a convention center as opposed to those that weren't, those that were a tourist destination as opposed to agencies that were not inclined to be a tourist destination per se. So we think that the analysis was a good one, as Homer related, relative to this Conference and Visitor Bureau's performance, and particularly relative to the prior administration. I think we got a very comprehensive representation there, but in terms of the funding levels, we'd like to study that a little bit further before any recommendation would be made relative to the funding.
Any further comment, Councilwoman Gardner? Councilman Sellers?
When does the contract with the Bureau expire?
Next year, I think.
2008, yes.
And the contract is by I think it's ordinance, not charter. They get 1% of the TOT.
10%.
No, it wasn't by ordinance.
Or 10% of the TOT.
It was by agreement. We had a written agreement with them.
Well, let me...
No, but there's part of it
Councilman
that's in the
Selich-
ordinance, though, and then part of it was added on, I think.
Councilman Selich is correct in that the transient occupancy tax rate is 9%. There's a 1% visitor service fee that's distinct from the transient occupancy tax. In the last agreement that was established with the Conference and Visitors Bureau, rather than receive the visitor service fee exclusively, the last contract provided that they receive 18% of the total received by the city from hotels and the vacation rental properties. So they're essentially collecting 18% of everything that the city realizes, and what customers realize is the TOT payment. It's the combined rate of TOT and visitor service fee.
So they're really getting 9% by ordinance and 9% by agreement, and that gives them 18%.
They're getting everything by agreement. The visitor service fee comes to the city's general fund, and the Conference and Visitors Bureau is paid out of the general fund pursuant to the contract, which sets the rate at 18% of the total payment from hotels to the city.
Okay, so that's up then next year for renegotiation with them. Okay, thanks.
Any other further questions with regard to this matter? Okay, any comment from the public? Seeing none, I'll bring it back for a motion.
Move we receive and file.
All in favor?
Motion carries.
Okay, that concludes our consent calendar. On to public hearings. Item number 16, Madam Clerk.
Local Coastal Program Amendment Number 2007-001, CLUP Update, PA 2007-027, readoption of the LCP amendment to reflect the location, type, densities, and intensities of land uses established by the new land use element and other new policies of the general plan.
Okay, do we have a staff report on this?
Senior Planner Jim Campbell will provide the staff report.
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, this amendment is really the readoption of the Coastal Land Use Plan amendment that the council saw back in March of this year. The amendment incorporates all the changes that were a result of the comprehensive update of the general plan that was done last year. The reason we're here readopting it today is because there was a 6-week notice required of the draft of the document that was not adhered to. So we went ahead and noticed that more than 6 weeks ago at this point in time, and we're asking the City Council readopt the entire amendment. There really are no changes from what the council saw back in March. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Does council have any questions of Mr. Campbell? Thank you, Jim. All right, I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing no one,
I move the recommended action.
please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, item number 17, Madam Clerk.
Coastal Land Use Plan Amendment Number 2007-003, PA Number 2007-196, Development on Coastal Bluffs on Pacific Drive, Carnation Avenue, and Ocean Boulevard.
Mr. Campbell again.
You're like a jackrabbit.
Probably should have just stayed right there. This amendment this evening is, again, an amendment to the Coastal Land Use Plan. Some of the policies, it kind of arose out of the council's consideration of the Erie project back in August. At that time, I'll get to that in a moment, but currently we got two policies that allow bluff-based development in Corona Del Mar, policies 4438 and 4439. Those two policies kind of work in concert. Basically, it prohibits bluff-based development citywide, but it does allow it in Ocean Boulevard, Carnation, and Pacific within the predominant line of development. So the existing development pattern that's out there establishes a line within which all the other projects or other properties would have to be within that area. There are other policies that come to play that talk about minimizing the alteration of the coastal bluff as you develop. And during the Erie project, it was suggested that the policy to minimize alteration of the bluff would somehow be minimized or eliminated because the other policies would suggest that you could build to the predominant line of existing development. So in other words, it was thought that, it was argued that the predominant line was a build-to line, and then you might otherwise have unlimited alteration of the bluff. And the council rightly pointed out that that interpretation really wasn't what was originally intended by the policies, in that the predominant line of development was really one factor out of many. The other factor predominantly would be the minimizing the alteration of the terrain. And so staff embarked upon this amendment this evening to, in essence, clarify the policies. We've got new language for policy 8 and 9. Those two policies are really, they carry forward all the strict limitations that were in the existing policy. Policy 8 would then really deal with the bluff-faced development again to site the projects within the predominant line of development. Additionally, then policy 9 would deal with the public improvements. And these are existing policy language, basically. And then we'd add policy 19, which basically says, again, that the predominant line is not the only factor to be considered. Lastly, there was a minor change to the definition of predominant line of development to insert the word existing, because there's a little confusion over the two terms. So we're making them the same. I just wanted to highlight one change that was made, actually two changes that were made from between the Planning Commission's consideration of the item and this evening, which is what's within the draft resolution. The first change is really to, the Planning Commission inserted some language into policy 19 that would make it only applicable to Pacific, Carnation, and Ocean. And that was out of a concern that the item wasn't noticed to everybody. Now, we have noticed everyone for this policy change, and we really didn't want to have that language be limiting to just those streets, because the predominant line of development actually applies to a variety of other bluff properties, including Buck Gully and Morning Canyon. So we wanted to make sure that the term was used consistently throughout the city, at least that the policy would be used consistently. The last change is fairly minor, but we feel is fairly important, and that's on page 3 of the staff report. It really talks to the second sentence of policy 4438 And we're to make a very minor change. We want to talk about the predominant lines of development rather than one line. Our fear is that if we use one line in the language that's there today, it might suggest that you could use both principal structures and accessory improvements to establish one line. And the thought process here is we would have a line for each type of development, meaning principal structures would be looked at with one predominant line, and then accessory structures would have a separate predominant line, and we wouldn't want to mix the two or have accessory structures then dictate where possibly principal structures might be. So we felt that minor change was also fairly necessary. With that, I can answer any questions on the amendment.
Does council have any questions of Jim?
Yes, I just want to clarify. It's always difficult in reading the minutes from the Planning Commission. They're pretty cryptic, so I can't always follow the process. But for 4.4.443-19, the reason they wanted to insert Ocean Boulevard, Carnation Avenue, and Pacific Drive is not because they didn't feel that this policy should necessarily apply to other areas such as Buck Gully, but that they felt those other areas hadn't been noticed. Is that?
That stemmed out of a concern of the wording of the very first portion of the staff report where it talks about simply Pacific Drive, Carnation, and Ocean Boulevard. And the policy changes to 8 and 9 are applicable directly to that area, but the other policy, 19, if worded in the way that staff suggests, would apply to other properties, namely other coastal bluffs, Galaxy, the coastal canyons, Buck Gully and Morning Canyon, as well as other coastal bluffs.
And don't we have at least along Buck Gully, we're using a predominant line of development?
Yes, there are policies for Buck
Already.
Gully and Morning Canyon that are in the coastal land use plan as well as the general plan that have the same policy term, and we want to be consistent with how we take into account all of these other policies when we look at development on those areas.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions of Jim? Thanks, Jim. Anybody else have a comment? I'll open up for public comment. Anyone here that would like to comment on this agenda item? All right, seeing no one, I will close public comments.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move the staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Please vote.
That is without the specific streets. Is that not correct?
Right. Staff
Right.
recommendations.
Staff recommendations.
No specific streets and lines of existing development.
Right,
Those are the two
lines.
changes. Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay. Public, are we on public comments? Public comments?
Public comments are invited on non-agenda items generally considered to be within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council. Speakers must limit comments to 3 minutes. Before speaking, please state your name for the record.
Public comments? Anyone? It's a first. No public comments. All right. Let's move on to oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Excuse me, ma'am?
Denise Oberman. Good evening, council members. I'd just like to submit into record an addendum to the petition that was submitted to council on October 17th, which some other citizens wanted their voice to be heard. And I do have one request that doesn't need to be answered, but I want to request that the council consider calendaring a special session in advance so we could be assured that the group ordinances would definitely get completed in January. So I wanted to ask, it doesn't need to be used, but perhaps the council could be proactive and consider scheduling of a special session. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else that has a public comment before I close it? Okay. Public comments are closed. We'll move on to oral reports from City Council on committee activities. Councilman Gardner?
Yes, I sit on the Newport Bay Executive Committee, and it ties into what Leslie was talking about earlier. We have been concerned because the funding is running dry that we have now for the dredging that's going on in the Upper Bay. And if we have to pull the dredge out and stop the project and then restart it, it could add about $1 million in costs while we look for funding. So the city asked the other members of the executive committee that if we didn't find the funding from some public source, other source, that we ourselves, those members of the committee, we're all obligated with certain percentages, would pony up and get the job completed. This did not get a big positive response, but we at least got it on the table, and I did urge that at least the homework would be done, that even if they didn't want to give the money, that perhaps the money could be loaned and then paid back over when we did get the public funds.
Councilwoman Daigle? Councilman Webb?
I have none.
Councilman Henn?
None.
Councilman Curry?
None?
Mayor Pro Tem Selich?
No report?
And I also have a report. All right, Planning Commission agenda and oral status report. Director Lipo, no report. None. Wow, we're going to get out of here in record time tonight. Continued business, item number 18, Citizen Satisfaction Survey Questionnaire. Staff report?
I will attempt to do a staff report unless somebody on the Finance Committee wants to talk about it. This process has been going on for probably started about 6 months ago in terms of council approved the hiring of Phil Batchelor to be a consultant to work with us on the benchmarking process. And it's really a three-step process. The first phase, which would be a customer satisfaction survey. Council has previously hired a survey firm out of Kansas to conduct the survey. There will be 1,800 homes within the community that would receive the mailed survey. After a certain date, the survey company would call those homes which have not returned surveys in order to make sure that we get enough surveys for statistical validation. The Finance Committee met on Friday. It did make a few changes to the survey questions, deleted a few, added a few, and at this point, it is before the City Council for your approval so that we can give the go-ahead as far as the survey company is concerned. A word of caution, and we discussed this in Friday's meeting, was that the survey people tell us that it's good for a survey to be really no longer than 15 minutes in duration. So those people who would be called because they did not return their surveys through mail, would be asked the survey questions over the telephone. So if you have any additions to make, it would probably be good to look and see if there are any deletions to make, because it seems like we're probably at that threshold point to where we're very close to maybe making it too long. And with that, I'll open it up for comments from the committee members.
Councilwoman Daigle?
Yes, had a deletion, question 21. There might be some support for that. And then on question, our consultant thought it was probably not a very good question. And then question 22 is, I think what it asks now is, assuming no difference in the level of service, how would you feel about non-city employees providing this and this and this? And what I would add is something along the lines of, assuming no difference in the level of service, how would you feel about non-city employees providing services if there was a significant cost savings? And certainly what would be perhaps practical use for the council is, in most instances where quality is the same, I don't think council would look at contracting out. It would have to maybe be if there was somehow a cost savings. And I think Councilman Henn may have an additional add on that question.
Yes, and if council decides to take out item 21, that creates a little more room for one more line item without causing consternation to the operator of the software here. So I'd like to add one item to number 22, it would be item E, which would be something like parks and street landscape maintenance.
Are you looking at a different survey than I am? Mine says, are you?
It's 22E.
There was an updated one distributed.
One that we got on Friday.
On Friday.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Henn, would you repeat that?
Parks and street landscape maintenance.
Councilman Webb?
I think parks and street landscape maintenance are mainly under private contract now. In comment on 22, I would feel comfortable about a general question, like Councilmember Daigle mentioned in the preamble, that by non-city employees, providing it saves money, but I'm not sure that we need to have any of the specific departments, because why aren't we putting in library services, with legal services, building, day-to-day maintenance, and those types of things in there? I don't know why we would pick and choose 5 or 6 that probably, for instance, public safety. You know darn well that our community is going to come back and say, hey, our police and fire are doing a great job. Why try to break down just 4 or 5 when you're not looking at everybody within the city? So I would recommend that if we're doing 22, that it be a general statement that you ask for your recommendations on without mentioning any particular departments. I have discussions on several other items, but perhaps we need to work this one out first.
Okay. If I might attempt to address your question, the thinking was that we wanted to drill down into specific areas. I mean, if you just posed a general question, we wouldn't really have maybe the feedback that we'd be looking for. And I would certainly agree, that it wouldn't. Public safety it would not be something people would consider.
Then
We felt as if libraries wouldn't be something else. I think part of it, maybe Councilman Henn can add to it, was these were the categories that were suggested by our consultant. But maybe you have additional comments.
Yeah, this was at Phil's suggestion that we have some more specific line items here, and I think one of the reasons is if you just leave it general, Don, somebody looking at that might say to themselves, well, heck, no way do I want non-city employees providing public safety. I'm just going to answer that no. And so the idea was to provide some level of differentiation for them to respond to the question. And, I suppose we could add more line items. We just picked a representative sample of line items. This was not intended to be an exhaustive list. And if you want, we could say, for example, consider the following departments, in answering this question. That's fine with me. I did not, it wasn't my expectation this would be an exclusive list.
Okay, well, I personally could support a general question, but not with the various different departments being listed, but that's maybe a personal preference.
Councilman Daigle?
And I would add, our consultant advised us to not put Public Works on that list. That would be really dumb to do, so that was one of the questions.
Well, I guess that I would consider
Why is
water
that?
and wastewater in the same category as public safety, because that's one where I'm not aware of anybody ever complaining about the services they get. It's a department that pretty much supports itself related to the fees that are charged for water, and so that I would suggest that perhaps that one get removed. If we're listing beach maintenance, that's when you look at the operation, that's a piece of equipment, and perhaps on a weekend basis you hire a few extra people, which I think the General Services Department does, to go around and assist in pickup, so that I'm not sure that we are accomplishing anything by listing those various different departments or functions, I guess I should say, rather than departments.
And I think the discussion we had Friday was, do people really care? And trying to get to the answer of that rather than just on a general basis, do you support contracting out? And the question would probably be asked, but then the question would be, well, where do you support contracting out? So this certainly wasn't an exhaustive list, but it was an attempt, without getting too confusing and listing 8 or 10 departments or 10 different services, to say, well, then how do you feel about these?
Well, I guess there's danger in using the information to say, okay, well, we have those 4, and 3 out of the 4 people said they strongly agree. Do we concentrate just on those 3 and trying to come up with a private, or are there perhaps some others, like, for instance, the suggestion that Mike had down there related to street and park maintenance? I'm sure that there might even be some other actions. So that's why I've made my statement on that particular function. Are we ready to talk about some of the others, or shall we settle this one first?
Yeah, why don't we just do a straw vote on that one, since there seems to be a little bit of disagreement. All in favor, I guess, of leaving it the way it is? Aye? The statement the way it is, item number 22.
Well, okay.
How many options would there be?
Can I suggest that we vote on straw vote Councilwoman Daigle's suggestion for modifying number 22?
Oh, I'm sorry.
She had a change.
With Councilman
With your-
Henn's
Yeah.
addition.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So those two.
And her change was to add language about if there are significant cost savings in the header, and to specify parks and street landscaping.
Even though that's already pretty much contracted out?
Well, it's not by any means completely, so.
Okay.
Straw vote, the Daigle Hen adjusted 22. Raise your hand, or just raise your hand. All in favor? Okay. We'll leave it the way it, or as adjusted. Does anybody else have a comment about any of the other questions?
Yes?
Go ahead.
On item number 1H, I think it might be a little bit better clarified. This has to do with the management of traffic flow on city streets. And it says this does not include interstates and other highways. I would suggest that you say this does not include freeways and other state highways, to try to separate out between city streets and stuff that we don't have control of. Then in item 3B, what are we really trying to get? How satisfied are you with the character and quality of our neighborhoods? Are we being asked to evaluate the neighborhood that we live in, or all the neighborhoods in the city which have an extremely large variation of what they're like? So I kind of like the previous one, which was the appearance of the city. So I'm trying to figure out what we're trying to get at with the character and quality of our neighborhoods, and if the person is being asked to evaluate more than one or just the one they live in.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Councilman Hen.
That's actually a good point, Don. And the general plan that we adopted makes a big point about the fact in our visions and in our policies of protecting the character and integrity of the individual villages, if you will, in Newport Beach. It's a prominent feature of the new general plan, and we thought that we ought to ask how we're doing with respect to that. But I agree with you. I think the intent here was the neighborhood you live in, as opposed to in general.
So it would be
And
your
I support
neighborhood.
that change. Yeah, your neighborhood, or the
Okay.
neighborhood you live in.
All right.
I also thought that 1H, that makes sense, that clarification on the type of roadway.
Under,
Before you leave 3, I'm just kind of looking through it here. 3E says feeling of safety in the city, and then, but number 4 is perceptions of safety and security. Is somehow, is there a reason why it was separated, or is that kind of redundant? Or maybe it should be moved to 4?
I think 4 should have been drilled in quick.
Is there any other reason for segregating it that way?
No, I think that was probably standard language that we picked up from the consultant as far as other surveys that were done, as I recall.
okay,
Okay.
on to the next page, item number 7. I think that we've had real significant discussions within the community on parks. And I would like to see there be a separation of item B when we talk about number of city parks. And I'd like to say number of active city parks and number of passive city parks, because I think that within the community we have quite a diversity of opinions related to whether or not we have enough passive parks or whether or not we have enough active parks. I know that later on you talk about the availability of athletic facilities, but I really think that it would be nice for us to know what our community actually feels about active and passive parks. So I would like to suggest that one line be added which would indicate active parks for one line and passive parks for the other line.
Yeah, I would disagree with that. I think that you got to get into defining what active and passive parks are, and you get into a lot more information than the survey is intended to get into.
Any other comment on that?
I'd like to straw vote it.
Okay.
Well, I think, to sort of give an idea how I'll be voting, the outdoor athletic facilities, that would kind of speak to active park uses. That would be question 7E.
Well, it doesn't look like I have any support for getting the passive parks.
No, I would
think
support
that's very-
it, but I don't think you're going to get past me. So.
Okay, well, I can see where the majority tends to be going, so I've made my comment at least on that one. That's okay. Let's see, I think that, does everybody here understand the difference between a water service and a wastewater service? What that actually is? Does everybody know that wastewater means sewers?
Water you drink and water you flush, right?
Okay, but does the general public know the difference between wastewater and stormwater? Would it be better for us in this particular instance to either say sewer services or in parentheses sewer system or something to that effect under C, so that we make it clear to the general public what they're saying, evaluating how satisfied they are?
I would agree with that clarification.
Sewer/wastewater services?
That would be fine. It's just that so many people that I come across don't know the difference, and they assume that it means stormwater.
Now, the survey is largely a product of the staff and the consultant working together. They brought it to us Friday
Right.
afternoon, and we had a couple comments, but it's really pretty intact in terms of what the staff came up with.
Okay, under code enforcement, item 13F, are we talking about enforcement of parking regulations, which is a police function, or are we talking about the enforcement of the land use function, which is required parking spaces for various different developments? I'm asking a question, because I think that under code enforcement, that would really be making sure that under your land use element that you're providing the proper number of parking places, and that you would be looking at parking regulations being enforced under the police and safety functions.
Well, that's a good question. I took it as the ticketing function.
I don't think that's what you really want under code enforcement, though. Well, yeah, but the police...
Are you suggesting put it under public safety?
Yeah. But I'm equally concerned about code enforcement and making sure that the places that are required to provide the adequate number of parking spaces for their use, that those particular items get enforced, because sometimes we don't follow up on that. For instance, the houses in residential communities that fill their garages up with junk, and so you can't park in them.
But how are you going to explain what you mean
Yeah.
in 3 or 4 words, Don, on that one?
You could say enforcement of parking regulations by PD, because I think that's what the intention was. It's
Enforcement of-
basically parking a red curb, 2-hour parking and those kind of things, which enforcement would come out of the
Yeah.
police department.
So that's certainly the way I took it.
Okay, well, I took it that it
Well, would you-
probably meant land use,
Would you feel better if it was under public safety? I mean, that is
Yes.
sort of a public safety function.
if that's what we're
I
trying to
guess.
come up with.
Does anybody have an objection to moving it there?
But-
Okay. Why don't we just move it to public safety, and then it'll be clear at least it's a police function and
Okay.
not a code enforcement function.
Now, are all of these, under code enforcement, are all of these considered land use requirements? Because it seems like to me that under the code enforcement, we're interested in making sure that code enforcement enforces all of our land use regulations.
I didn't take it that way at all. I took it just that this is the code enforcement guys going out and saying you got runoff coming off your property with paint in it, and you can't do that. At least that's what
Or-
code regulations, code
or-
enforcement does.
you have a duplex with 3 families living in it, so that is a land use regulation.
I sort of doubt that the public draws that distinction very often, Don.
Okay.
And yeah, if there are a few people that do draw it that way, that's okay with me. I'd just as soon leave it the way it is. I think most lay people would interpret just like Nancy said.
Okay. Under item 17, under maintenance, where we say cleanliness of stormwater drains in your neighborhood, how is somebody going to determine how clean the storm drain is that's completely underground, unless we're talking about just the opened areas?
I think that would be, I mean, I know that I tell General Services occasionally when I see a storm drain, particularly when it's got the grate on it, it gets piled up with leaves and everything. I'm assuming that's what it meant again, not that they're doing a bacteria count of what's inside.
See, now, I would consider that to be under, say, street sweeping, which cleanliness, I would consider that to come under cleanliness of city streets, but that's...
I think as long as we don't have a lot of people from Public Works taking this survey, it's going to be okay.
Or lawyers.
I'm sorry, but these were, okay, I think that, I believe that's the end of my questions. Thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you, Don. Anyone else have any?
Actually, Don, I'm really glad you took the time to go over it carefully. I mean, that's what I was hoping, so.
I hope all of us did.
All right, I'll open it up for public comment. Is there any public comment on the contents of our questionnaire? Okay, seeing no one, I'll bring it back to council for a motion.
Move the item with the appropriate changes as straw poll.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries.
Okay, before we move on to item number 19, I'll beg the council's indulgence and go back to announcements. I thought this would be handled under public comments, but much to my surprise, there were no public comments. And so I will address an issue that came up since the last meeting. The city received a letter from the law firm of Jackson, DeMarco, Peckinpah from Mike Titus, who represents the concerned citizens, requesting a discussion, I believe, of any potential conflicts that I may have with regard to the sober living group home issue. Since that time, our legal counsel at Richard Watson and Gershon has completed a conflicts check on my assets, my businesses, all of my interests, and they have prepared what has turned out to be a 20-page conflict letter. There are a couple of slight modifications to that letter that need to be done, but Jim Markman of that firm is here to discuss the letter and to comment on its conclusions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The idea of responding quickly was actually fortuitous because we had plunged into this analysis. We have actually 31 pages if you include the exhibits.
Oh, excuse me.
And this letter deals with more than the question which was asked. So what I'd like to do tonight is respond to the question which was asked, which was about a specific, the mayor's involvement at 214 Cedar Street. And then I'm going to ask the council to do something I almost never do, but we think it's appropriate in this case to actually release this privileged advice letter so the public can see it and look at the analysis in the hope that this is going to be completely in blue sky, and that we do that with all of these conflicts presentations because we're trying not to be secretive, and the analysis the mayor believes should be made public. He's willing to waive the privilege, so unless somebody from the council disagrees, when the final letter comes, which will be probably tomorrow, because there's just a couple of facts, 2 words to correct, really. If a member of the public wants to see this letter and the exhibits attached to it, which include all of the documents related to Cedar, they would be available. So unless somebody objects to that process, that's as open as that we know how to be. Now, addressing...
May I just make a comment? I'm expecting also a letter similar to that for me.
Yes.
which I will also make public.
Great, thank you.
That letter, I think, is coming in a matter of days.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, to address the Cedar property, which precipitated the request to address this quickly this evening, the background is as follows. The mayor provided property management services to a person named Carl Princic, P-R-I-N-C-I-C, who is a personal friend of his from boyhood and lives in Indonesia. He has he owns the property at 214 Cedar Street together with his parents, and he resides himself and works in Indonesia, so he needed local management, asked the mayor to do this. So, and as a matter of fact, originally the mayor had been his real estate broker in purchasing the property. That's back in 1997. So in 1999, there was a lease of Unit A. There are 2 units on this property, and the mayor brokered a lease to Mr. Ryan Price and Mr. Rene Conte, and had managed the property after that up through 2007 with 5% monthly, 5% of lease proceeds management fee. And in this letter, all of the details of that are laid out, including the massive amount of cash flow that was involved in this, which is $70 a month for years. And as I've said, we've attached the original lease, the lease application by Mr. Price, and a second lease. So in 2004, and now the first lease was a residential lease for one of the 2 units in this property. The second unit, Unit B, was leased to Mr. Price in 2004, who said he was going to use that for a home office. Now, at that time, the mayor had learned that Mr. Price was possibly in the group home business in Costa Mesa, and because of the concern that perhaps Unit B could be turned into some sort of facility for recovery, you will see in that lease it actually precludes using the premises for recovery housing. It's a specific prohibition in the lease on Unit B, and has been in there ever since. So this arrangement went on from 2004 up to 2007. 2007, allegations came to the mayor's attention to the effect that Cedar Street may have been being used for a sober living facility. Inspection did not indicate that, but there was a possibility that particular unit, which is Unit B, the office, was being used for counseling or testing centers, so was somehow becoming associated with group homes. And because of that fact, the mayor essentially broke off the relationship in April of 2007. That is, he turned over his management function to Mr. Princic's family and has had nothing to do with the property since. In other words, when he saw there might have been any connection with group home on that property, he simply got away from it and has never touched it since. So the property is now being managed by Mr. Princic's company. So we analyzed that whole situation. We came to the conclusion that the only connection the mayor has as a source of income is Mr. Princic, who's in Indonesia. And then we had to analyze what is the impact, the indirect impact of this particular ordinance that we're processing, the whole group home regulation ordinance, potentially on the value of Mr. Princic's property, which is the Cedar property. And when there's an indirect interest on property owned by one of your sources of income, the legal presumption is there is no material impact. And we have this letter goes into all of this, so we have no specific facts that would indicate this property is impacted any differently by these regulations than thousands of parcels of property in Newport Beach. So based on all of that and the legal precedent applicable, we reached the conclusion that the mayor has no conflict of interest as far as working on the group home process and the regulations stemming from Cedar, the Cedar property, or his relationship to Mr. Princic. So that's essentially the outcome. This letter also talks about other properties the mayor has as principal residence and rental properties he also owns in Newport Beach, and his business, his real estate broker business. So all of that is analyzed. I will tell you there's one interesting issue that we conclude is not a conflict, but there has come out of the Planning Commission some proposed regulations to the effect that there would be some kind of overlay or a certain area of the city where you have undersized lots, inadequate subdivision, however you want to characterize it, where there ought to be wired-in disbursement requirements, 1,000 feet, 75 feet, 500 feet. That's a concept that's been going through the process. And under certain circumstances, if the mayor has property, his property is in that area that's been described as proposed for that treatment. If somebody could say that that's essentially like a zone change or a change in zone because you're treating that separate property distinct from other property, then the mayor arguably could have a conflict. Our conclusion is no, he doesn't have a conflict because all that is really another performance standard or disbursement requirement put on certain properties because they're small lots, they're close together, and all of those other factors. So we don't think, and we have concluded and opined in here, that that is not a conflict. And on top of that, of course, we haven't reached the stage where the ordinance is going to present that issue or not. If that issue is ever presented, the mayor can abstain from that one issue. If he chooses to do so, we can segment it. So our view is, at the present time, there is no conflict inhibiting Mayor Rosansky from participating fully in this process. Again, the whole letter will be available to the public. One other comment I'd like to make is I have reviewed the Newport Beach City Council policy A16, and my understanding, I've read this one-page policy very carefully, and I view it as a policy that's meant to implement all of these legal requirements that deal with conflicts of interest of a financial nature. What it really required the mayor to do was, the minute he thought there could be a conflict, he was to report to the city attorney and get her feedback. He did that. He got her feedback. She concluded there wasn't a conflict. This is all about the Cedar property. So that was compliance with the policy, and if somebody doesn't think that was compliance, certainly getting this complete analysis in this opinion letter will be full compliance with that policy. So he has nothing to report because he doesn't have a conflict. So that's what I would be reporting to you tonight, and we'll have that letter here tomorrow in final form for public distribution.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Councilman Webb.
On the overlay issue, it would seem like to me that any one of the city councilmen could be in an area where that overlay could potentially be in place, and so that let's say that it happens to cover 4 of us.
Then we'd have to go into a rule of necessity process, and you would be drawing straws to see who has gets to participate. That's where we'd go. But let me explain again. We don't think it's a change of zone. The only reason we have reservations in this formal opinion is because there is no FPPC opinion, there's no case, there's no advice letter that addresses the definition of what would be a zone change in this kind of context. We don't think it is, but we have to bring it to your attention. And you're right, other council people could face the same issue, and we would reach the same conclusion. So that's what I have tonight, unless there are questions.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
As Jim said, that letter will be made available to the public for anybody who's interested in seeing it. As far as I'm concerned, that puts the issue to rest. As far as any conflict that I may have, I do not have a conflict. I've always maintained that I don't have a conflict, and I hope that after reading the letter, everybody who reads it will agree with that conclusion. All right, let's move on to item number 19, Marina Park Master Plan. Staff report.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council members. Item 19 is a discussion for an opportunity for you folks to give us some feedback and hear more about the Marina Park Master Plan. This has come to you once before as a concept plan. It's been fleshed out through a series of meetings through your own design committee, which is a council citizens committee. And in addition to that, we had at least one neighborhood meeting. It was just last Thursday at the American Legion facility. I'm going to introduce Dan Herman and Tim Bundy, and they're going to run through the same presentation that they gave at both the last meeting of the Design Committee and the American Legion Committee, and then we'll welcome your questions and comments.
Well, thank you. My name is Dan Herman. I'm a principal in the landscape architecture firm Webb Herman Design Office located here in Newport Beach. And one thing that Dave Kiff didn't say that I'd like to make sure and share that you know that the steering committee that you appointed last spring unanimously endorsed the plan that I'm going to present to you today. And that's quite an accomplishment to the leadership of the committee and the committee's willingness to compromise over some fairly contentious issues when we started. As I think you're aware, in this process, we did really three things. We did a technical analysis of the marina, looking at its issues related to sediment, flooding, and other issues. We looked at the arrangement of the uses on the park, making sure that they were compatible with each other. And then we explored the design of the two buildings, the community center and the sailing center, in more detail. So we'd like to share all of those with you today. I think everyone is, all of the council are familiar with the park. But for the general public, we're bounded by 18th and 15th Street, 18th, Balboa. We actually don't go all the way to 15th. We go right to the edge of the American Legion. But we've also in the study included the American Legion Park, which is identified as 12 on this map. The boundaries of the park also include the tennis courts, the Girl Scout house, and the playground on the frontage of Balboa. This is a computer simulation of what the proposed improvements would look like. This is Balboa and 18th Street. So if we start at this end, we have a Girl Scout house located at the corner on the beach. Parking lot with approximately 24 spaces. That parking lot would be used not exclusively by the Girl Scouts, but for the Girl Scouts' benefit and the basketball courts and people coming to the general park. The majority of the park is a large open area that is planted with some trees, but not enough trees to block views, but enough to provide shade in key areas of the park. As I said, we have the basketball courts, and then a children's play area located adjacent to the Girl Scout house and the beach. We also have a water play area that's located near the children's play area, but far enough away from the beach so as not to provide technical problems with the sand getting in the pumps for the water play area. Of course, the primary focus of the buildings within the park are a community center and a sailing center, which have been designed as two separate buildings. We have the water side facilities for the sailing center, and we'll go into both of those in much more detail for you. And then a visiting vessel marina that's oriented perpendicular to the bay and located about 100 feet from Balboa. There's a large parking lot, approximately 120 spaces here with an entrance off of 16th Street. And then the tennis courts, which are now located on the park, have been relocated to the American Legion Park, and we have two tennis courts located there. This is another aerial view just looking from the beach side. So we have the Girl Scout house, the play area, the large open area, and the two buildings that I spoke about. If we look at those same functions in plan view, there are a few other details. As you remember from previous presentations, the concept for this project was the window on the bay. And that's first expressed by the large open area, not containing buildings or parking, and then further expressed by the expression of the two walkways that link the two major use areas. And it was our thought that those walkways would be planted with the palm trees that now exist on site. So we would relocate those and plant them along the walks. We've also have a drop-off at this location, and then a series of walks along the beach, and then through the center of the park for people going north and south on the peninsula. As I mentioned, the focus has always been that expression of the window to the bay, and the park clearly improves both the physical and visual access. This is just a study sketch of what that entrance point might look like. We're across from 17th Street. Second. And this is a little simulation of what you might see if you were coming to the park and bringing your child to the sailing center. So as you see Lido Island in the background, as we come to the building and the steps to the second floor, we're looking at the sailing dock facilities. These are some sabots being stored on the waterfront. Looking across at the visiting vessel marina, and we're terribly underutilized with those sailboats, but they're here for the weekend. We're looking at the building, above which you'll hear more about. These are the classrooms on the first floor, and then we're turning 180 degrees, looking back along the walk we just came, and then the beach walk, the beach. And now, this time, instead of going to the sailing center, we're going to go to the children's playground, so we're taking the left leg, and here we see a lighthouse structure, which I'll tell you more about later in the presentation. The water play area. Our view then focuses on the children's play area, and this would be the Girl Scout house in the background. We have a surfer looking, or a skateboarder looking for walls that he can't find anywhere within the park. I think some of you may have seen this. What we've added to it is we've defined the limits of the bay and then represented the homes on Lido Island to give you an idea of scale. So now again, we're turning 180 degrees. There's the sabots on the docks, the community center, and back to the walk that we just came on. I have to say this worked fine until I put Lido Island into the slideshow, and then that simulation became too large for the computer to go smoothly. What I'd like to do is talk a little bit more about the building and actually have Tim Bundy do that. We started the process actually by doing a survey with Parks and Recreation Services and then developed a series of building plans. And they're very exciting plans, but I'd like to point out that it's just conceptual at this time. It's not a final design, and certainly much more effort needs to go into defining the building.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm Tim Bundy, a principal with Bundy Finkel Architects. We were brought in to help distill some of the basic program needs that the various departments had been talking about. And what we have listed here is an indication that we have the two separate structures, the sailing center and then a community center as well. Start here with the sailing center. It's basically consists primarily of a large boat bay, which is storage for the various small boats that are part of the sailing program. We have the basic reception area, lobby space. There's an opportunity for some display areas. There's the functional utilities of the restrooms. We have some lockers and some small amount of the shower facilities in that area. And then we also have some office space, some administrative opportunities there, storage, and then we have a cafe up on the second floor. We'll go into that in just a minute. On the community center, we have the same type of an opportunity for a reception area with major effort towards the flexibility of some of the multi-purpose rooms for various classrooms. There's additional restrooms, some offices, and up on the second floor there's another larger banquet-type facility, and then some conference rooms and a catering kitchen as well. Why don't we go ahead and, this is the first floor. The building was oriented obviously towards the water with the direction to make sure that all of the important rooms had access visually to the water, so that became kind of a significant challenge, and it directed quite a bit of the orientation of the building itself. They're separated by a little over 20 feet to allow a view directly to the water itself, to provide kind of a space that services as a kind of a space between the buildings as well as the structures themselves. The conference room, or the actual classrooms you can see are oriented towards the water, reception area, core functions of the restrooms down here. And then on the second, over on the sailing center side, this is the large boat bay, the main entry lobby space with some display opportunities for potentially some donor walls and a variety of other places. Circulation back to reception office area for review of what's going on at the sailing center area, another meeting room, and then the lockers and flexible rooms there. The second floor, we have a larger banquet facility that can seat up to about 80 people. That's also subdivided. Conference room aspect for additional kind of a larger meeting space that could seat up to around 20 or so. Catering kitchen, restrooms, some administrative office space, and then some direct circulation vertically is intended to allow a lot of the daylight into the space. On the sailing center side, we have the access vertically and a corridor, administrative office space. The cafe area takes the majority of the second floor up here. And then a key function between the two buildings is this observation deck that connects the two of them, providing physical access from these rooms out to an outdoor space, as well as certainly the visual aspect of the bay itself, the park down at this end. Small deck area out here for some dining opportunities, and then also observation, kind of a deck for any instruction to go on, actually to the sailing facilities going on in this particular area. Some of the imagery of the building is designed to provide some kind of a striking structure that has a certain identity to it, provide a place that is a location that is kind of a destination for not only the peninsula, but for the water side as well. The materials are intended to provide a kind of a certain nod towards a variety of sustainable opportunities with various types of materials, including potential hot water heating, solar hot water heating, photovoltaic cells, a whole variety of sustainable aspects as well. Next couple. Again, these are just conceptual ideas of how the massing could come together. We got these kind of lantern-type entry stairwells that provide an entry statement from the parking lot itself. The space between the two buildings, kind of a beacon to the bay itself, if you will, that is part of the cafe itself. Then this is a view from the beach side, looking back at the building. Again, the intent is to anchor this portion of the park itself and provide as much access visually as well as physically from the buildings out to the environment outside. Some more views with the boat storage and some of the ventilation aspects. Will be a lot of natural ventilation, a lot of natural daylight from a sustainability standpoint as well. And here's a view from the deck back to the landmark restroom.
So one of the major features of the plan is the waterside facilities, which is the sailing docks and the visiting vessel marina. The way that the sailing docks will work is there will be a central gangway or ADA compliance ramp at this point that centers on the opening between the buildings. And we have a series of floating docks, a 200-foot-long dock, which was something that the Harbor Commission was very interested in. And so these docks are designed so the boats would actually be stored on the water during the sailing program. We work with Parks and Recreation Services and identified a number of kind of boats, the Lidos, FJs, 420s, and the Sabbats. One of the major points that Parks and Recreation Services made to us is the popularity of boats change over time. And so one boat may be popular now, and a few years from now it'll be different. So they wanted the greatest flexibility in terms of the dimensions built into the facility, and I think we were able to do that. In terms of the visiting vessel marina, we have a series of slips designed at 40 feet wide per boat, and that may be refined as we go through the process, but that's what we're showing at this time.
Wasn't that 40 feet long?
I'm sorry, yes, 40 feet long. I made that mistake twice now, haven't I? 40 feet long. The width is the widest required by the state for power or sailboat. We also assume that a few of the slips may be used for dinghy storage for people that have their boats moored in the bay and then would like to come ashore and visit some of the restaurants in the area. We assume that the marina would be fenced, and again, we have an ADA compliant gangplank at this point with a locked entrance and then a building that would house an office, restrooms, and washrooms. If we look at that three-dimensionally in the next slide, you can see one of the features of the visiting vessel marina is its orientation on the main entrance. And so this provides both a dramatic view of the park. It also provides opportunity to clean materials out of the bay to get access at that point. And it brings that water view very close to Balboa Boulevard, about 100 feet away. And so it'll really change the character of the street, and both with the park and that water view be very, very dynamic and exciting. In terms of the marina itself, we're looking at a floating concrete dock system similar to you see in these images. As I mentioned, we'd have the fence and the security gate. Fence would probably be a little bit taller than this. And for the youth sailing docks, we use the Sea Base and Orange Coast College sailing facilities as the model with the floating docks and getting the boats as close to the water as we possibly can so that people in the program don't spend their time launching the boats but can get the boats rigged in on the water as quickly as possible. The key part of that system are these floating panels that are easy to bring the boat on and off and protect the boat and work extremely well. One of the big issues that we worked was parking for the project, and you can imagine that the parking and traffic will continue to be an issue as we go through the process. We work with the planning department to define the number of parking spaces that the total park would have. We also looked at the circulation within the parking lot for emergency access, and we looked at the design of the parking lot so that it complemented the opening in the building. And so as you can see, we have an aisle midway through the parking lot and then an open area. So that view corridor extends from Balboa all the way through the building. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, our entrance is at 16th Street, and we're anticipating at this time we would have 1 lane in and 2 lane out. A majority of the parking is to the west side upon entering, and then we have a small lot on the east side, and we envision that lot would be used for staff working at the facility, for tennis players, for people at the visiting vessel marina, and then overflow of the main parking lot. We can skip that one, I think. This just shows you the view from West Balboa by putting the larger grass area fronting the sidewalk and then the opening. That view is enhanced as we go through the buildings to the bay. And then this is just a quick summary of the analysis conducted for us by the planning department. They used the Institute of Traffic Engineers parking requirements and broke the project into 3 categories: community and aquatic center, marina, and the Girl Scout house, and determined that 120 parking spaces would be required. And at this time, the plan provides 143 parking spaces. The last piece of the plan that I'd like to share with you tonight is the children's play area. And we were looking at making a significant upgrade to the play area now found in the park. One of the main features is a restroom building that would include a lighthouse element. And that was designed both as an icon for the bay and then an element that would balance the 2 buildings located on the other side and frame the park. We've been asked if it would be an operating lighthouse, and we did not think it would actually have a beacon operating, but we can envision it being uplit or downlit so that you could see it, but that we wouldn't get a lot of light spilling over into any of the residences adjacent to us or across the bay. And then the rest of the park is designed, our play area is designed kind of as a metaphor for the bay. So we have a series of islands and nautical theme with boats and docks, and have designed it so that there are 2 distinct areas, one for very small children and then one for older children. So that concludes my part of the presentation. If anyone has any questions.
Very good. Excellent presentation. I was particularly excited about that walkthrough there. Something
Yeah.
that I haven't ever seen on any of the city projects, so it's kind of exciting to see, how it operates in real time, I guess.
Right.
Councilwoman Gardner?
Yeah, I had a question about the children's water area.
Yes.
From the way the picture was, since people were standing on the water, I take it it's not like a pool, but one of those fountain-type things?
The closest thing that I can describe that you might be familiar with is
the
the pop
Fashion
jet.
Island?
Fashion Island
Yeah,
pop jet
okay.
fountain. What's envisioned is that we would use a rubberized deck surface that the water would go through into drains, and there'd be a series of play apparatus where children, and some of them could immerse themselves, and then others could just play actively.
Okay, and then this seems to me like an excellent spot to try permeable pavement.
Oh, that's actually a good point. For the parking lots, we were proposing permeable pavement, and we were also recommending a bioswale be located in this area, and that would be to collect all the other surface runoff and roof runoff from the buildings.
Councilwoman Daigle?
Yes, nice work by Mayor Pro Tem Selich, and I know also it's been a passion for a long time for Councilman Webb, and I see our Parks group here, and Harbor Commissioners and the committee, Councilman Hen in his district, and then also the American Legion. So it was really a great collaborative effort.
Considering where we started on this piece of property about 3 years ago, come a long way. Anybody else? Comments?
Well, I'd just like to say on behalf of the residents of the First District that I am really excited about the possibility of finishing through on this park. We had an outreach, a public outreach meeting the other night at the American Legion to allow the residents from the First District to also weigh in, and there were a number of recommendations from them that we will most certainly take into consideration here as we're trying to finalize this plan. And, of course, there will be ample opportunities yet before us for public input to weigh in and be taken account of as we go forward in the various further iterations of getting this completed. But, again, I'd have to extend, on behalf of the residents of the First District, special thanks to Mayor Pro Tem Ed Selich and to Council Member Don Webb for their ongoing efforts and patience to get this done. It's just a terrific accomplishment, a great example of how we can collaborate together to get a good outcome. Dan and the architect, everybody did a great job here. So I feel very good about it. We're most certainly not done. We've got lots more to think about and to take account of as we go forward to a final plan. And I'm excited to get going on that. So.
Okay, I'm going to open up for public comment. Anybody from the public that would like to comment on this plan for Marina Park?
Hello, my name's Ernie Bicani. I've lived here for 20 years down the peninsula, and I was fortunate enough to buy a house there 4 years ago, actually at 1617 West Balboa Boulevard, which is directly across from this building that's going to be built. And I'm very excited that there's going to be a park across the street. It's a beautiful project. I have a 14-year-old son who will utilize it. But one of the issues I do have is that I don't believe anybody sat on the committee that lives between 15th and 18th Street. And when you look at the size of the building, which is 120 feet across by 40 feet high, my house is 20 feet across, and so is my neighbor's. So that represents about 6 houses that range from $1.5 million to $2 million. So you're looking at about $1 million of taxpayers' money, and no one's been consulted until very late in the game. What I'd like to see changed is I'd like to see the building either split and placed at 16th Street and 17th Street, where you see the access to Balboa Boulevard, so it would obstruct less of the residents' view, because you figure it's about 60 feet across if you split the buildings in half. And I don't know what the distance of the road is. But certainly no one lives in those corridors right there. So that would be one recommendation. At least I would say swap the marina over and put the building on the other side, so once again, it's not blocking the residents' views. But it is a beautiful project. I think the people that live on Balboa Boulevard and own those houses should be involved in the process, so we don't end up lowering our property values. And that would be a terrible thing with such a beautiful project going on. Another recommendation was at the last meeting, as far as the egress and ingress in and out of the park. There's no lights there right now, so if anyone lives there and they know 4th of July, any holiday, the people are going to be sleeping in that parking space without a light to get in and out of the property. So I'd recommend utilizing the lights at both 15th Street and I believe it's 18th Street, which would make it easy to get in and out of the park. So that's it. The last thing I'd like to say is I really don't know what the process is. I heard a lot of people talking about what changes they'd like to see or at the last meeting. And once again, it's a beautiful project. I think everyone agrees with that. But I don't know what happens next, and I'd hate to hear about the building being built, again, like I heard from my neighbor, hey, there's a big building going up across your street, without being notified and being able to participate in the process. So if anyone could contact me or let me know how that works, that would be great. Thank you.
Dave, I'm sure we can put Ernie and whoever else from the community wants to be personally notified of any upcoming meeting and chance for input. That would be a good thing.
Make a quick comment to that effect, Mr. Henn and council members. All of this information is up on our website, so for those of you at home who do use the website and who haven't, please start using it. You can email directly on Marina Park and we'll add you to an interested parties list, as well as if you took a look at the staff report there, again, for folks at home, the next phase is fairly extensive in its public involvement. All of the design committee meetings are public. They're held here at City Hall. Those are Brown Act meetings, so they're agendized and noticed, and then there'll also be a CEQA process and then a Coastal Commission approval process.
But we are being asked tonight to approve the general plan for this. A conceptual plan. I mean, his comment was he'd like to see buildings moved. Do you anticipate that kind of a drastic change in the plan will occur further on?
That's always a possibility throughout the process, sure, until later on.
Also, was there a member of Central Balboa on that committee, the Central Balboa Homeowners Association?
I believe so. We had,
Dave, I think I can answer that. Grace Dove was actually, in effect, the nominee of the Central Balboa Community Association.
So there was resident representation. There was resident representation from Central Balboa on the committee. Thank you. Anybody else have a public comment?
Good evening. I'm Nancy Nygren, the CEO of the Girl Scout Council of Orange County. And we just want to congratulate and thank the Protect Our Parks and Council and Citizen Advisory Committees for this great collaboration and express our excitement about going forward and beginning the conceptual planning in the next month or so for the Girl Scout facility there. We have approximately 25,000 girl members here in Orange County. About 1,000 of them reside in Newport Beach. Another 12,000 adults volunteer for our organization throughout the county, of which about 600 of them are in Newport Beach. And this is an exciting time for all of those girls and volunteers, an opportunity in the future to have access to the bay, and hopefully we can come up with a great collaboration with the sailing organization you're putting together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment for you. I was attending an event over at the Sea Base, and they were wondering how they could get the Girl Scouts involved with the Sea Base and some of the activities they have over there. So you might want to give one of their directors, Lisa Miller, a call.
Okay.
And see what she can do to help you out to move some Girl Scouts into that area, too.
Great, thank you.
But you can't sell cookies there, we determined.
We sell cookies everywhere.
Not at the Boy Scout Sea Base. Popcorn only.
I don't know. I took some cookies to see Les Barron over the Boy Scouts last time I saw him. So.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, Tom.
Mayor Rosansky, I always wanted this to be a hotel, but of course I'm kidding. Of course I'm kidding.
Not too late. Hell no.
Can we change it? No. No, as a Newport Beach resident and member of Protect Our Parks.
Give us your full name for the record.
Okay, Tom Billings.
Thank you, Tom.
You know, it's exciting to see us finally reach this milestone after, as you said, about 3 years of work, which started back in I guess it was 2004, where the hotel was proposed, and then the city council chose to put it to a vote to the public whether it's going to be a hotel use or a park use in terms of the zoning. And I guess you could go back almost like 25 years where various plans have been presented in terms of being a park, a recreational site, a marina, a sailing center. None of those stuck. And in the meantime, the mobile home stayed there. And now this one seems to be sticking. And it's been fully vetted, which has been really exciting to be part of that process throughout those 3 years. It's been contentious, at times, first hotel versus park, then park versus marina. Now we end up with both, and working through the American Legion's concerns to coming up with this plan. So that's exciting. I'm really excited for the community, most of all, because of what this provides them is public access to the bay. We have very little of that, and that was the driving force from the community and from our group's input to make sure that this site provided that. And as Dan Herman went through so professionally the plan, that it provides it in many ways, from a sailing center to a park to the Girl Scouts having their expanded site to a tot lot. And then on the marina side, it's a visiting yacht marina for visitors, but it's also has potential use for some of those slips to be used not only by UCI Sailing Center, and Brad Avery's now interested for OCC Sailing Center because they need space for some of their keel boats, but for people who can come in and just the general public and maybe rent a Harbor 20 or rent a Laser or rent some of the city's boats for their own use, once they're checked out. And so, it's just a great concept, and it's, as others have mentioned, I'm really excited about it. Going forward, I just want to comment that, as we all know, city councils and city council members change. The staff usually stays pretty stable. And I just want to, it's interesting looking back to 2004. I think, Steve, you and Don were the two that were on the council, and now we see new members, so you can see how it changes. And then, therefore, plans or concepts that have been approved could change. But I just want to say to the council, and also especially to the city manager and Director Batum, and that, I know I've talked to you also since this has happened, that I hope we can make this stay as it's been designed, because it's been so fully vetted, and that in 2009, when it's supposed to break ground, the target date, I guess September 2009, when the mobile home parks will be leaving, that we truly can break ground and go forward with this design. So I fully support this plan. I hope the council approves it. And to this gentleman's comment who lives across the street, I can understand that building will be there, but your property value just went way up, because you're going to have bay views. Maybe it's not directly, but angled views if you're directly across. And I know that there's an opportunity to express more of your concerns, because if you live across the street, you're going to see construction going on. But all those people who live between 19th and 16th or 15th, or say 16th, I guess, they now have views of the bay from their homes that are right on the boulevard. So I think their property values are going to go up. Anyway, so thanks for everything that council did. I'm looking forward to, being a part of it as we move forward. And then special thanks to Dan Herman and his company, who did a great job.
And thank you to you, Tom, who was very persistent.
Somebody left a pair of glasses on the podium.
Mayor, council members, good evening. I'm Tim Collins, a resident of the Balboa Peninsula and a member of the Harbor Commission. I want to add to the comments that have been made. While the Harbor Commission, starting 3 years ago or near 3 years ago, would have liked to have seen more visitor slips, more marine service featured to this property, we wholeheartedly support the compromise plan unanimously by vote of the Harbor Commission and accept all of the good citizen committee work. We hope to be involved in the ongoing working drawings, and we will support the outreach in any way we can. We continue to receive comments from the boating community and the marine service industry, and we will offer up some feature refinements as appropriate to the ongoing process. I think this is an example in the 15 years or so that I've been banging around on citizen committees, the best example of what can happen when all the constituents get together and advocate. And I, too, want to thank Tim Bundy and Tom Billings and Dan for the courtesies extended to the Harbor Commission, and thank those council members who picked up the ball from your predecessors and brought it home. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
There's some paperwork here. Okay. Good evening.
Sorry, Tim. I'm thinking of a Tom Collins, but you're Tim Collins.
That's true.
Trying to get out of here early, we might make the bar. No.
Good evening, council and staff. My name is Marcia Dossie, and I live about a block from here. But at the meeting that we had in the for the citizens, there were several issues that haven't really been represented here tonight that I'd like to address. We do appreciate everyone that's put in these efforts, but one of the concerns is the height of the building and the bulking of the building. It will be one of the biggest buildings on the peninsula, bigger than City Hall. That is a big concern to us. The spreading out of the services. There's a bathroom at 19th Street already. There's a bathroom at the Girl Scout house. There's a bathroom at the Tot Lot. There's bathrooms in the building. There's a bathroom over here. We think there should be some consolidations of the buildings and of the facilities. The cafe, we're already wondering why there would be a cafe there when we have businesses on the peninsula that are struggling to survive during the winter and off seasons. Is this a seasonal cafe? Who's going to use it? Just the people that go there? And in the off season, how many people are going to go there? We'd rather not see that. We'd rather see another room to be used somehow. The concern of the flooding that does go from the bay out to Balboa Boulevard on 19th Street with a permeable surface, the water going back into the bay, and the pumps are locked off, and with the rainwater, we think there's going to be more flooding there. And so we'd like to have more consideration given to runoff water and the locks being in place. The name of this was View to the Bay. There's a lot of blockage of the bay that we're not understanding. An example is McFadden Plaza. There were canopy trees that were there for years until we were able to successfully get those removed and put in queen palms. You didn't know there was a lifeguard station there for years. We would prefer not having canopy trees, having some kind of a palm tree that gives it a beach area, gives you shade, but doesn't block the view to the bay. So we'd also like to have other types of landscaping considered as well. The boat storage. The example they gave you of the boat storage for the boating center on PCH is 6 feet below. Those docks are 6 feet below PCH. When people drive by PCH, they don't see the boats being stored. If you're going here where it's more level service, those boats that are out on the docks are visible, and we'd prefer them stacked up by the building so they're not visible. Hand trailers were used years ago. They can still be used, or we can hire someone that takes them down before the learning sessions. The Tot Lot. The Tot Lot is great, but now it's by the bay. Are we going to have a lifeguard that's going to ensure the safety of the children? I'm sure parents look away at times and children are going to run to the bay. So who's going to be responsible for the children now that they're by the bay? The bathroom facility was mentioned last time. We'd like to have it moved over by the street, by the Girl Scout house, so it's taken away from child predators. Another issue that was brought up, McFadden Plaza seems to have it's 3 blocks away. We have a huge issue keeping the sidewalks cleaned. We can't get the city to steam clean them but once or twice a year. The plaza and the sidewalks. The sidewalks are doubled from, I think, 28th Street all the way down to 19th Street, and the city does not maintain those. The residents maintain those best they can. And I know General Services gets plenty of complaints, because I get plenty of complaints from the neighbors of not maintaining the sidewalk appropriately. We'd like to know who's going to maintain the park, who's going to maintain the sidewalks, and how clean is the facility going to be, because we would like to have a clean facility here. I know that the view of the peninsula is not, and we do not receive the same level of services that the people in Corona Del Mar do. And we would like to have those same level of services with clean sidewalks and clean parks. The half courts. We realize that they are segregated from the tot lot, but not far enough. We suggested that the planners go over to 38th Street, where there is a tot lot, a little closer to a half basketball court. Those basketball courts are used by young males primarily, with vulgar language continually. And we would like to see a further segregation between the tot lot and the half courts. The parking, we requested that they be metered parking, but they were told they were just discussing that at the moment. They didn't know. But we would like to see blue meters put in there as well as metered parking lots. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marcia.
I'm Liz Bond. I reside at 1607 West Balboa, and I will be right across the street from the big buildings. My concerns are basically two to be expressed and reiterated to you tonight. First off, it's my understanding the buildings exceed the city height restrictions, so I think that needs to be considered to downsize those. Second of all is the traffic situation at 16th Street, because I am right there. And I can tell you, I walk across the street. As it is right now, there's no traffic control, and sometimes it's very dangerous. That park, with its entrance at 16th Street, is going to be very dangerous. The other concern with traffic is not only vehicular traffic, but pedestrian traffic, not only right in front of the park, but on the other side of the street and surrounding it because of the pedestrians that the park will now attract. But those are my comments for consideration, and thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else that wants to comment on the plan for Marina Park? All right, seeing no one, I'll bring it back for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to move the action on the agenda. I'd just like to say that in my short time on the City Council, this has been probably the most rewarding thing I've been involved in so far, to see something that started off with, as Tom said, a lot of contentiousness, and see all the different parties work together and put together a plan that I think is going to be greatly beneficial to the city. As Dave said, we still have a lot of work in going through the schematic design phase to refine all the details, and looking forward to that process.
Second.
Okay, any further comment by council?
I'd like to third it, and it's been a rewarding process for me to be able to help out and offer suggestions and work on the compromises that we've come up with. And I think that some of the items that we have been brought up tonight, we will be able to look further at and discuss, or if we don't modify and changes, we'll hopefully give you some pretty good reasons why they can't be done, so that I think that we need to go forward. I believe the PB&R Commission will meet first Tuesday in December to discuss it, so that's another opportunity for you to offer your suggestions, because we definitely look to the PB&R Commission as being a advisory group related to recreational issues, and want them to be able to give us their thoughts on what we've come up with.
Please vote.
Mr. Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to follow on. You know, we have gotten a lot of feedback now just in the last week or two, and we're going to do the best we can to incorporate that feedback in the final design. For example, things like traffic and parking, you know, those will have to be vetted out very thoroughly in the environmental process for this project, and so there'll be lots of opportunity to think that through carefully. And hopefully we'll find some of these ideas have merit and can be incorporated. So we'll be working on that as we go forward. Thanks.
Anyone else? Please vote.
Motion carries.
That's the end of the agenda. Motions for reconsideration?
A motion to reconsider the vote on any action taken by the City Council at either this meeting or the previous meeting may be made only by one of the council members who voted with the prevailing side.
Any motions for reconsideration? Okay, tonight we're going to adjourn the meeting in honor of Louise Greeley. Louise Greeley was a resident in West Newport and Newport Terrace. And I met Louise probably right after I got on City Council. She was probably one of the first people who called me up and said, Steve, I want you to come over and I want to invite you to tea and look at Sunset Ridge Park, or what will be Sunset Ridge Park. And Louise was very instrumental to the city, not only with this park, but I think in park matters in general. She was also, I believe, a member of the Orange Coast River Park Committee, and was always interested in the well-being of our city. But as I said, particularly I dealt with Louise with regard to Sunset Ridge Park, and she was the catalyst for the city pursuing legislation in Sacramento that ultimately gave the city the right to lease the property, which led to ultimately the city purchasing the property last year. And I want to thank Louise for her efforts to the city. She will be missed. And I think, Don, you kind of knew her too. Why don't you say a word or two?
I, too, got invited to tea, but it was probably in the early 1980s. And it was before we had a name for that park, and it was when it was being planned, or Caltrans was pushing really hard to put in residential units in that area, and we were negotiating with them on right-of-way for the realignment of Superior Avenue. And she was very concerned about having houses. She wanted that to be an open space. I think she wasn't real happy about an active park, but we finally convinced her, and she was instrumental in getting that piece of property named Sunset Ridge Park. And so that she's the one that brought it before the council and got our PB&R commission and actually got the name changed. So yes, it was. She was a very active individual and very interested in that area. Anybody else?
Yeah, I also knew Louise, and I would say that she was a lady, a wonderful lady. And she, to me, I mean, I'm always impressed by people who are always dressed. As a chronic schlepper, she always...
You mean always well-dressed?
Always well-dressed.
Okay. I assume she was always dressed.
But she was so active. The Orange Coast River Park would not have come into fruition, the whole idea of it, if it weren't for Louise. And several years ago, she had a stroke. And being a strong Christian Scientist, she did not go through any of the normal rehabilitation, but did a wonderful job of rehabilitating herself, continued to participate right up to just a month or two ago, and was always a stimulus to us to keep moving forward and work with the other people to get the park accomplished and recognized. So yeah, it was wonderful to be able to work with her on that.
Yeah. Anybody else? Well, go ahead.
I have another.
Oh, well, I was going to say she was an asset to Newport Beach and West Newport in particular, and she will be missed. I believe Don also has...
Yes, I'd also like to close in memory of John Reed McClarty. We all called him Jack. He was a resident of Newport for over 35 years. I first met him and his wife as part of the sailing organization back in 1969 or 70, and we were all active members of the Lido 14 fleet. Jack worked as an aviation systems engineer and with the Ford Aerotronics and later L'Oreal. When they went out of business, he was working there and had to move south, which he didn't particularly care for. But he and his family have been active in the community over the years, and he is survived by his wife, Martha, 2 daughters, and 3 grandchildren. And I'd like to extend our sympathies to Jack and his family and friends.
Thank you all for coming. We are adjourned.